Mitchell. I am the CEO and founder of Black Women in Clinical Research. Thank you so much for joining us tonight for Clinical Research Instructors. So we have my co-host, Courtney. Courtney, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Yes, hello everyone. My name is Courtney Troxler Barnes. I am your co-host for this evening and hopefully most evenings to come. I am a resident member of Black Women in Clinical Research, and I am also a CRA1 with PPD, part of Thermo Fisher. Thank you for having me tonight, Danielle.
Thank you, Courtney. And we would also like to introduce our speakers. Tiffany, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Sure. Hello, everyone. My name is Tiffany. I'm so happy to be here and glad to have all of you. I am a regulatory professional by vast experience. I've been doing that for a while. And most recently, I kind of just consult a lot and I do a lot of things. And my most passionate project right now is working with the Endometrial Cancer Action Network for African Americans. And that's kind of my spiel. So thank you so much for having me.
My pleasure, Tiffany. And I need to connect you with someone. I don't know if you're connected with her, but when you said that, I'm going to connect you after. I'm the connector, so I like to connect
I never
people.
say no. Except
Okay.
regulatory. I'm the no girl in regulatory. Otherwise, I'm the yes girl.
Oh, well, you and Latoya will get along perfect because she is queen of regulatory. So
Yes.
I would like to also introduce Latoya. Latoya.
So I am Latoya Hinton Howery. I am the owner and research director of Next Innovative Clinical Research. We have locations in Chicago and Houston.
Thank you so much. So we are just going to jump in and talk about being a clinical research instructor. The clinical research industry has so many different, what they say, a plethora of careers in clinical research. So what inspired you to become a clinical research instructor? And what aspects of the role do you find most fulfilling? Latoya.
So I didn't know that I was an instructor. I really didn't. It was something that I got pulled into. So I worked for a company where I was training coordinators. I was just teaching them what I knew. And someone from Clinical Research Fast Track reached out to me, I want to say before COVID. So it was 2019. And I said, I'm not an instructor. You have the wrong person. And I declined. And they reached back out and I declined again. But when COVID happened and they said we're doing everything remote, because I was nervous about speaking in public, speaking in front of a classroom and teaching them and messing up. So once they said they were doing it remote, I'm like, okay, let me try it and see what it's about. So I started teaching for them and I really liked it. So one of the classes that I would teach is recruitment and retention, which is one of my favorite things to talk about. And then I found out that because I talk a lot, that I was like a natural instructor. I love, just talking and, just telling people what I know. And from teaching with Clinical Research Fast Track, I started creating a site ownership masterclass where I started teaching people how to own their own research site. So it was one of those things that didn't come natural to me because I didn't know that I had those skills. I didn't know until I was actually in it. And then it's like, okay, I really like this because I like talking. And outside of that, I just get pleasure on people learning things. And then people, I love collaborating. So I never know who I'm teaching. So a lot of times I'll teach someone and they'll come back and say, hey, I have this opportunity and you were so pleasant to me. I want to give you this opportunity as well. So it's always like I give and then people, just give in return and collaborating and just watching other people grow. It's always been like one of the things I like about teaching, coming in contact with other people.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Toya. So I'm like you, Toya. I'm a chatterbox. That was what I was nominated for in high school. But
Yeah.
funny that you say that, even though I like to talk, I never thought of myself being able to talk in front of people. That to me is a different skill that you have to learn and start to be comfortable with when you're talking in front of other people. I know a lot of times for me, I say jokes when I'm talking. And I went somewhere where I knew these jokes were funny, but people weren't laughing. And so I said to them, I said, so y'all don't think this is funny?
Yeah, no, I get that.
Yeah, nobody responded to me. So I think a lot of times when, especially when you're talking in front of people, you have to be comfortable with yourself. And I thought it made me laugh even more when I saw that other people weren't
You're
laughing.
laughing.
So, you know,
Yeah.
sometimes you just have to have fun with yourself, especially if you're talking. And I think that that's really important with being an instructor. You want to make sure that people are almost in a sense entertained by you
Yes. Yes,
and
absolutely.
feel comfortable with talking to you. So I know that I have stuff where I'm like I kind of feel like sometimes I'm that awkward person, but I'm okay with being awkward, and I feel like it's okay. So you just getting comfortable with speaking, I think is really important, especially if you're
Yeah,
trying to pursue
definitely.
being an instructor. What about you, Tiffany?
Y'all are crazy. I was about to put in there, you're not awkward. So I actually love talking, and I love talking in front of people. So I love doing that. So I was ready to go for it. But what actually got me into instructing and teaching is the pandemic, right? I kind of just, as many of us, I'm pretty sure, kind of just started reflecting on my career. At the time, I had been doing regulatory for about almost 20 years at the time, 18. I was a director of regulatory and compliance at Mount Sinai Hospital up here in New York at their cancer center in the clinical trials office. And I was just like, I have this knowledge base, based on my experience, right? And how can I use that? And I was just stuck in my house and I was like, I think I want to teach. And so, like Latoya, I came across Clinical Research Fast Track. So me and her, but she started before me. So she's an OG. You started like a couple of years before me. And I thought it was just a natural thing to do. And I did come in when it was virtual. And in that too, I actually got an adjunct faculty position at Rutgers University in Jersey, which is an online graduate program for clinical research management. And I'll give you that story later. That's about careers and how you get that, right? And why you have to think outside the box. But what's most fulfilling to me is that I get to use my experience as my expertise, because you can learn a lot, right? My mom always said, common sense isn't so common. And she would tell me I'm book smart, but I have no common sense. She will always tell me that. I think in a loving way, I'm not really sure. But so, I like to take that, and like what Latoya said, what fulfills me too is honestly seeing people move into positions in clinical research and then move up. Like I love seeing people, especially on LinkedIn, get congratulated on a new role and things like that. And of course, being in a room of women that, we're the majority here, but we know outside of here we're not the majority. And so to see that, especially when I'm teaching, holds a special place in my heart. So that's what it is for me.
Thank you, Tiffany. So how do you stay current with the latest developments and trends in clinical research to ensure your teaching remains relevant? Anyone would like
So
to?
I'll start. So with me, like one of the main things I said I teach would be recruitment and retention. So a lot of times I'm able to teach because these are things that I'm doing. So I'm at the front line. So what I'll do is just stay, was not, I don't want to say was younger, was hip, but always keep someone around you that's younger that knows the technology. That's number one. And the one person that knows all my technology is on the call, actually Ebone. So I may have like questions that I may need to know about what's going on with the newest trends. And then also just reading, staying active on LinkedIn, seeing what the different sponsors are posting about different studies or different initiatives and things like that, so that I'll know like, okay, this is changing. Or, I don't want to say in research, a lot of things pretty much stay the same, but they're really slow to move, so there's not like a huge difference in like protocols or how information is obtained. But as far as getting the word out and what's being inclusive, now that's changing drastically. So it's like just technology and getting out there and just keeping yourself around people who know things, and not being in the immediate I know everything, I don't need to know anything else. So just surrounding yourself with other people that know stuff.
That is
Absolutely. I'm a lifelong learner, right? And so I tell this to my investigators and doctors in general. No matter how long you've been in this industry, you are a lifelong learner, and there's something to learn every day. And so again, like regulations, they literally have not changed since the early 90s. They said they were going to change this year, but I'll wait. So, like she said, the way you write a protocol, the way protocols need to be adhered to, compliance and, things like that. But recruitment and retention is always changing, right? And, trying to diversify that, which I think is very interesting. And so for me, I really just kind of just stay abreast, right? I do a podcast where I talk about clinical research, kind of keeps me in the know, and keeps it fun. And then again, I just kind of learn what people are doing, and you will be surprised. LinkedIn, again, people post a lot of things about clinical research, and so I'm always looking on my activity and my notifications to see what people are posting, what they're talking about, and that's how I kind of just learn what's going on in the world, especially when it comes to, for my CRCs out there, my research coordinators out there, data. I can't tell you how many times, and honestly, one is too many, how many times I've seen these large institutions have to get reprimanded for unethical and inaccurate data, right? And so that's something that's really big for me, because what that does is it does nothing to help diversify clinical research when we already have these barriers that we have. So I just kind of stay in the know, again, just seeing what's in the news or looking on LinkedIn to see what people are talking about. And I would just say with Clinical Research Fast Track, the one thing they do is they have to stay abreast of it. And so when they give us information to teach, it makes it easier for me to know what information they're going to be promoting out there and how current that is. So they have to stay current, right? To keep it going. So that's how I stay current.
Thank you, Tiffany. So what about challenges? What kind of challenges do you face with being a clinical research instructor?
So
You go, Latoya. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, I haven't faced any real challenges at all. I want to say at all, because I was blessed enough to be pulled into it where I wasn't trying to be an instructor and try to knock down people's doors to listen to me. So in that case, I was pulled into it. But I could see where people would have issues where, because I look like I look, I'm a Black girl, it's like, where do you get this knowledge from? Like, who? So I have that issue approaching some PIs. But as far as like teaching other people who want to be a coordinator or want to be a site owner, they listen to what I'm saying, but a lot of times when it's people that are not of color, they question, how did I obtain my knowledge and how do I know what I know? And basically what makes me so special, I don't know. They should talk to me and find out.
Because you are special. You are special, girl. For me, the most challenging part is, it's especially challenging for people who have a clinical background. Maybe they may be international medical graduates, or maybe they were practicing physicians where they were. I also, like Latoya, train principal investigators on their own responsibilities of what it means to run a site and run a clinical trial. And some people are, don't like change. Some people don't like change. And so I do find sometimes, not all the time, they will say, well, at my job, we do it this way. And my job isn't to teach you subjectively. My job is to teach you objectively. So if I am reading you a regulation, or I'm reading you, a guideline or international conference on harmonization rules, E6, all of those things aren't up for debate. Right. And so, I kind of just find sometimes, but I'm a listener too. So when somebody tells me, well, at my site, this is what we do. I remember one particular case where we were, I was talking about, private information, right? PHI. And, someone was telling me, well, where they are, they, willy-nilly go into patients' charts. Now I'm regulatory and I'm compliance, and I'm like, I don't have to even teach this. Think about yourself. Right now, as we're talking, would you want someone going to your medical record to see if you're eligible for a clinical research study you know nothing about or even asked about? No, right? And so there are ways to get around that, right? And so I have to teach them about waivers and how you are able to go into someone's medical record, but you got to get approval for it first, right? Or if they're already a part of your practice, like things like that. So I think that's kind of pushback that I get. That was just one instance. But that's usually it. Most of the time people do want to learn, like especially if they're students, they're in there and they want to learn. Like Latoya said, when it comes to investigators, if they've been doing this 15, 20, 30, I've had some doing it 40 plus years, they still want to do facts. They still want to do, like, they're not in the digital. They don't want to do DocuSign. They don't want to do any of that, right? And so they don't want to hear about electronic signature. And so those are the struggles with teaching people who are just, don't object to change. But other than that, it's pretty cool.
Okay, so it sounds like there are not a lot of challenges. So would you say that there are challenging concepts or challenging topics within clinical research that you feel?
It's all challenging.
Right.
I just want to say that people that's within research have a special brain and we think differently. These are careers that we're seeking. So once we're in research, it's one of those things like I want more, or I want to understand this particular part. I haven't come across a person, because I only work with people that's passionate about doing research. So that's number one. But number two, like I haven't come across a person who just couldn't get it, and so that's the thing, because I don't see a lot of people. Well, I'm not going to say that, because a lot of people voluntarily want to get into research because they like, oh, I heard it was money in there. And when somebody say that, I stay clear away from them. But for people who are passionate, who are willing to work for free, I've gotten so many interns that's willing to work for free just because they want to soak up knowledge. I love those people. So yeah, I haven't found anything to be like extremely challenging outside of the our research brains. But is this something that I could teach somebody who's brand new to research, brand new to clinical? Yeah, I think it would be extremely challenging.
And yeah, that's the thing too, right? So sometimes, especially, I'm sure you can attest to this, Latoya, especially when they're on the, like someone who wants to pivot into research, who's been a clinician, right? So I get this a lot of times with nurses. Research nursing and bedside nursing are totally different. They're not the same in any sense of the word. And I find that a lot, even in work and career, that clinical nurses who see, oh, you only work 9 to 5? Oh, you don't have to be like in the clinic that long. And they think they want to do it, but they don't realize the documentation that's involved with that they're not used to, even though they document, of course, as a clinical nurse. And so I think that time, in those times too, it can just be a little challenging. I guess that's more of like training though, not really like, teaching them, but it can kind of be challenging to make that pivot switch when you still have that kind of brain on. But like she was saying, we do all have like a special brain where it's like research. So we already know that we want to do that. But yeah, but I always tell people there is a place for everybody, right? Because, when people think research, they automatically think research coordinator, regulatory, or maybe research nursing. But nobody ever talks about IRB analyst or a research finance analyst, or, it's so many like contracts analysts, like all these other graphic designer, those are needed in clinical research too. And so people don't understand that, there is a space for everybody, but you have to have that fundamental, not even understanding, but wanting of, wanting to understand the science, because I have an appreciation for science I did not have in high school or college. That happened once I got into clinical research, and I had another context to look at it outside of just what I saw in a book, right? And so that was kind of what took me there.
Yeah, I agree with both of you. That's something that we talked about recently with one of the trial managers that I work with. You have to have a special type of brain to want to do research, because there's a certain level of crazy that we put ourselves through day in and day out, that you have to be crazy to want to come
I'm gonna
back.
spit my water out.
But it's true. Like it's like we get so frustrated day in and day out, but we keep coming back because the goal is to find the answer. And we're those type of people where we are dead set on finding an answer. So
Yeah.
you do have to be a special type of crazy. But I mean, hey, I'm here. So we're
It is what it
crazy.
is.
Yeah, I guess we're all a crazy bunch.
Crazy together.
Yeah, so and a lot of that, I guess that kind of comes into, misconceptions. And I know I've experienced this, even though I'm not an instructor, I have experienced this with people who they've taken this clinical research course and now they expect to immediately for people to let them into the clinical research industry. Now they think they're about to land this role that's paying 6 figures just because they took some clinical research courses. So I want to get your feedback on this. Like, what are some of those common misconceptions that students have about clinical research, and how do you address them?
So one thing, when I'm speaking to people, the one thing or the one role that everyone knows about that's super glorified is being a CRA. How can I be a CRA? What do I need to do to be a CRA? And I'm like, a CRA?
Ooh,
I'm like,
I'm just I'm just playing. I'm
I'm
playing
like,
for anybody.
This ain't for the week. This ain't the
no.
life you want.
And so I've never been a CRA. So I always say I've never been a CRA. I thought that I wanted to be one, but that wasn't my journey. But being I was okay with entry level learning the basics coordinator. And sometimes people don't want to humble themselves to learn the basics. But that was the best thing I ever did, because if I was a CRA, I wouldn't have the skills that I have to run a site, to run multiple sites. So it's like, all right, I started at the basic because I'm a medical assistant by trade. So that was the other thing that was super helpful. But I was able to learn everything. What's a protocol? How to read a protocol? What's the schedule of events? Everything from the basics. So that's what really helped me. So some people, if they're having a hard time finding a job as a CRA, take a step back, become a coordinator or even recruitment specialist. Like that's super helpful with really understanding what research is. And a lot of people want to come in the door and, like you said, make all this money without putting their dues in with doing the basic education, the basic of what is research, how does it work, what's the IBRS and EDC, like you don't even know the acronym. So we need you to go back to the basics. So yeah, so that's pretty much it.
I think it's
Yeah.
important to do your time. Like a lot of times, like I remember when I was joining the clinical research industry, there were so many people that didn't want to start at the site level. And not saying that that's going to be everybody's path, but working at the site will give you the foundation that you need. So when you are at the CRO, this is not the first time that you're hearing some of these things. And now you have to, in a sense, backtrack and figure out, okay, what are they talking about? What do I need to do? What process is this? What regulatory document is this? Because I have no idea. So, or what is a 1572? Some of those things where you learn at the site where you need that basic understanding and knowledge. And that's what I did. I started from the ground up. I tell this to people all the time. I never think of myself as being too big to take a smaller role and to make baby steps. It is okay to make baby steps because you're not always going to be in your infant stage. So learn what you can, use that so that you can grow. And I think that's a lot of times what happens with people when they take these courses. They just automatically think it's going to be magic. And now I'm just going to be in the highest role possible. Or they think that they're going to be in a manager role because they were in a manager role before the clinical research industry. That doesn't translate. I keep trying to tell people, just because you was a manager over here, don't mean that you're going to be a manager in clinical research. It's not the same thing. What about you, Tiffany?
Yeah, absolutely the same thing. And so what's weird is I actually started at a CRO, contract research organization, as a regulatory assistant. This is back in the day when there was no ECRFs. Okay, there were carbon copies is what I started with, and worked my way literally from regulatory assistant to coordinator. And then I switched over after 2 years to the site level. And what I do tell my students when I'm talking to them, because I can tell you that one, clinical research fast track, and also the clinical research management program at Rutgers, they guide you towards a career in industry. And I even told Rutgers when I came on, I don't really see any courses geared towards site level research, right? And so when you don't, and which is fine. I mean, but again, I think people see the money, right? They see the money. But then if you are at the industry level and you don't understand how sites work, because every site is different. And I also tell them, you would be surprised that even right now in 2024, there are some sites who still use paper charts. They don't have equal access to high-speed internet. And so when you go into it with that linear mindset, you're not really going to be able to see a bigger picture. And so I tell them, when you're looking for jobs, don't just put in CRA or CRC, put in clinical research. And you will find so many other positions you didn't know existed. And some of them, actually, a lot of them will be at the site level. And you might find that maybe that's your niche, and maybe that's what you like. So yeah, but again, I just told this during our wind down that we have, that I was a director at the site level, right? Been doing this a long time. I knew when I applied, but I don't really want to go into regulatory anymore because that's Courtney thing. You can have that, Courtney. I love you, girl. But I knew that if I was applying for regulatory jobs at a pharma company or at a CRO, I was not going to be a director level regulatory person, because site level regulatory compliance and pharma regulatory compliance is different. Submitting to the FDA, which I've done before many times, is totally different than someone like a Pfizer submitting to the FDA for the same thing, right? For an IND, investigation of new drug. And so I had to learn for myself, and it is humbling to be like, oh, I was a director, but I'm applying for regulatory coordinator 3, right? Jobs, all right? You know what I mean? I haven't been a coordinator in like over 10 years, but I knew that those are the jobs that I was qualified to do, because there was still a lot of learning for me to do on the other side of industry. And so I think a lot of times people get that misconception, and they see, and the money's good, but the money's also good compared to anywhere else. Even at the site level, money is good compared to other industries. And if you look it up, healthcare industry, STEM, is growing like this. right? And so against other, and that's why it's so much more competitive as well. Which is why everybody like kind of wants to get into this industry. But it's like, what are you willing, what are you willing to do and what are you willing to learn to get there, right? And so a lot of times that's humble pie. I've eaten it many times. I still do. I still do.
What they say, all money is not good money. So if you if
Right.
you're gonna be in a position where, yes, this is a high paying position, but it's stressful
Yep.
and you don't like your manager, uh you might as well do something that you are interested in and that you can really use your transferable skills. All right,
Right.
I'm gonna pass it over to Courtney.
Thank you, Danielle. And it's so funny that you bring up being able to transfer, certain skills and, how certain roles are different at the site level versus the CRO level. So how would you balance theoretical knowledge and practical skills training in your teaching approach? Actually, Tiffany, let's start off with you since you ended on that route.
Sure. So transferable skills, I just dropped in the chat. Transferable skills is a thing. So any of you who are PhDs or above, you know all about theoretical framework. That is all they talk about, right? They all talk about this theoretical framework. And that is the fundamental basis of any concept that we talk about, right? So there are theoretical frameworks for clinical research, how we approach clinical trials and every aspect of that. But that's just the basic, almost foundational level. And so as you go to your jobs, right? Each job does things differently. So again, I teach objectively, but when you go to your organization, they're going to say, well, I do this differently. And that's totally okay because their SOP, standard operating procedure, says it's okay. Right now, I may have a different regulatory opinion or a different professional opinion altogether. And so the way I do it is, again, I give my real world experience and I give the why, right? So this happened to me. And I like to give examples because, again, especially as we're talking about acronym soup, it is real. I am still learning acronyms today. Okay, today. And so, until you keep doing it, everything's always going to be like, well, is this right or is this wrong? And so those theoretical frameworks, what you always need to go back to reference. And then you kind of go back to your manager and your leadership to see, what's acceptable at your, organization or your institution. And things like that. And so to be honest, like I was thrown to the wolves. I'm just going to be honest. I knew nothing of nothing. I knew that I knew how to read. And so I tell anyone who wants to get into regulatory, if you can read, you can do regulatory work. Okay. So that's what I kind of did with that. But then after that, it was almost like, okay, let's make this the common basic sense level of what we're doing here in this role. And then tailor it to what your organizational needs are. As long as you're in compliance. So I always say, and I'm sure Courtney, you're gonna love this. I say you can think outside the box, but think within this one. Okay, so you can bounce outside that box, but there's another box outside of that you cannot go outside of. So as long as you're doing that, things can be innovative and changing and all of that, but kind of that's just theoretical groundwork, right? And then you kind of work your way up. So that's how I approach it.
I do love that. Yeah, you can think outside the box, but there is still a box that you need to remain within. And that's where we live because we don't want to go to jail and we want to get paid on time and we want to do all those things. I love that. Latoya, please expound upon that. I know you have something to say.
Of course. So I'm a little bit different outside of looking of transferable skills. My number one question is always, what are you passionate about? Ask them what are you passionate about and what are you good at? Because if you're not passionate about it and you're not good at it, I don't care about your transferable skills. It's like it's just not gonna work. So, finding out what you're passionate about, what you're good at, and then just basically just keep driving that. Like again, I'm a good talker. I can pretty much talk about anything. I can talk about stuff I don't even know. But that talking could translate into recruitment. I can be a great recruiter because again, like Tiffany said, I can read. And on top of that reading, I can talk. So let me read this inclusion, exclusion, and see if this patient qualify. And then those skills also, speaking to people in person. So if I can recruit you over the phone and I have this personality that make you want to come in, when I see you in person, it make you want to stay. That's recruitment and retention as well. So, always just finding out what you're good at, what's your passion, and just driving into that.
I love that. That is definitely something that I try to focus in on for a lot of my military folk who are transitioning out of a military career into, anything else, not just clinical research. It's over those last 20 plus years that you've given to this one particular company, this one particular thing. What was your favorite thing over those 20 years? You had to have something that you liked. And within that, you take that and you see where you can fit that into somebody else's world. And then you give the best version of yourself that you can give while doing that. And that'll help you grow. So I absolutely love how both of you went directly there. So, what resources or tools do you find most valuable for enhancing one's learning experience while you're instructing your research students?
My brain. So literally, I don't have like a book like, oh yeah, this is a great resource or this is a great resource. My experience as a whole is like the best thing that I can offer. That's pretty much it.
Because Latoya is a superstar. I don't know if y'all have been to her website or her LinkedIn. She's amazing. So there's that. So what I do is I usually, again, I do think that, Latoya being a talker, being a natural talker and talking like in a conversational tone, rather than like, this instructor tone where you're just reading off these slides, really makes a difference, right? And being able to use real world experiences also makes a difference. When it comes to tools and resources, I do tell them, you're looking at her. I am a resource for you here, just in terms of networking and, picking my brain and things like that. I also tell people, and I know Danielle's actually going to be having, I think, an event, like a workshop on this, clinicaltrials.gov. It's amazing. Like, I love that site. A lot of people don't even know about it, especially even those in clinical research. I used to actually register studies on there and put results on there. But it's also good for transparency on what's going on out there. You can get a job that way to know who's doing research. And then you can also be able to help people in your community say, look, just look at what's going on in the world right now to help with your condition, right? And it's not just cancer. I do cancer work. I don't know if you know that, but I do cancer work. And so it's not just, I say it's not just cancer work. It's all types of clinical trials, right? And so that's just one tool. And then you can go to the FDA website, right? Code of Federal regulations are right there. Some people don't know it comes out every April, despite, again, it not changing it over 30 years, but it comes out every April in waste paper. But it's okay. I'm not going to get with the FDA right now. So there are tools and resources, but again, I think when they're learning, they're just kind of absorbing what we're saying and just kind of taking that in to get that real world experience. Because I tell them, once I tell you, and this Zoom is off or class is over, you're gonna forget everything I said. You really are, right? Because until you start doing it repetitively, you're not going to remember, especially all those acronyms and things like that. So the tools are whatever your instructors give you in terms of reading material and websites and things like that. But then also get the job. And then when you get on the job, you're going to learn a lot. So,
yep.
Yeah, I definitely resource my tools or use my tools as often as possible. I was looking up acronyms today as I was working, scratching my head. I don't remember what this means. So I learned this a year ago. So can you share any strategies that you foster for collaboration and teamwork amongst your students for their assignments and projects? We'll start with you, Tiffany.
Sure. I feel like me and Latoya may have the same thing. So a lot of times what you want to do is give, again, real world scenarios, right? And so you want to say, let's kind of, again, we do a lot of breakout rooms with clinical research fast track when we're instructing. In terms of with the graduate program, it's the same thing, right? Where it's you're going to be in a group, you're going to get this scenario, and you're going to have to either write this proposal, right? Or you're going to have to complete this, serious adverse event reporting form, or things like that, right? And so groups also work because you're all bringing your own expertise, right, into what you have and the experience that you have. Because some people are a natural analytical person, where they're let me think about this, or, and then some people are, again, the talker. There's always someone who wants to represent for the group, which is fine, right? We like that. And so it's kind of working in a group, bringing all of those experiences that you had to see how you can apply that to this real world scenario, right? I don't like giving them scenarios that aren't likely to happen, right? Well, I do give them some that are rare, but if it's not likely to happen, how would you approach this now? And they tend to find, a lot of questions that come out of those, which I think is is very beneficial.
So, Latoya, because you spoke on collaboration very, very early in our discussion. So please give your insight.
Look, the queen of collaborating, because again, no man is an island. You can't possible. You get further faster when you work with other people. And the same thing, like, and I don't discount like anything. Like if I'm bringing in a newer coordinator or a newer employee, and I'm teaching them how to learn something or how to do something, I like to take their input and like, okay, if you feel there's a better way, let me know. And then we can work around, because as long as we're following the protocol, we're good. But if it's like, oh, I think that we should have the patients come in this way and do this. So it's all about getting feedback as well, collaborating with the team as a whole, not thinking I'm the teacher, I'm the instructor, this is me, never having that attitude, but always being receptive as to, getting good information and learning from your students. So it's like, I'll say something, they may have a question or they may have a comment that may be like, I never thought of it that way. But, never appearing to be like, I can't be the student.
Yeah, I think that's important in research as a whole, is just kind of like a level of humility that you kind of find, like understanding that you don't know everything, because there is so much to know that there is no way that you can know it. So not being afraid to say, well, I don't know, let me go research that some more. Let me talk to one of my colleagues and see how they approach that. Like I love hearing that, especially as a new CRA coming in on the scene. And as someone coming new into research in general, I love when my superiors say, I'm not sure, but I'm gonna find out and I'll be back with you, So as instructor.
Sorry, I was gonna say to piggyback on that, like this is a real story really quick. But when I came into this position that I had, my last one, they had these standard operating procedures that had not been changed really. And I sat down everyone who worked in that department and I said, tell me how you do your job. Because they had it all written down in black and white and nobody was doing it that way. Really nobody, right? You know what I mean? So like she said, like with the informed consent process, you have this whole nice blurb where you're going to do it this way and do it that way. But it's like, oh, we might go out to the waiting room. And that is not what I was like, what if the FDA comes in here, right? So it's all about getting to understand what day-to-day operational duties look like. And when people think too high level and they don't think you need to bring other people in the room who are doing the work every day, you miss out on so much, and you are 10 times more likely to be non-compliant on something that you actually wrote in your own standard operating procedure if you're not the one actually doing it. So I always listen to everyone who's doing the work to say, tell me how it's really being done so we can either correct something if it needs to be corrected or write it the right way so that when someone does ask for it, like an auditor, when they're reading it, it's being done that way. So I always listen to everyone to learn.
Awesome. And that is a perfect leeway into my last question. As instructors, and this is for those who want to get into instructing, and I hope that the person that I'm thinking about in my head has made it onto the call. But how do you assess the effectiveness of your teaching methods and adjust them accordingly to meet the needs of the diverse learners in your classrooms?
Diverse learners. I'm sorry.
Well, you have your neurodivergent.
First of all, I don't take nothing serious. I'm always silly.
You have your neurodivergence. Like, I'm a tactical learner. You got to put something in my hand. How would you teach me?
No. So again, with anything, of course, sometimes not sometimes, but all the time, you have to have a clear protocol. So we have to have instructions. I have to have a guideline of what I am teaching so that I can say, this is what we're doing. This is a step, we're going to do this, steps from A to Z. And then on top of me giving those actual instructions and teaching, I'm going to also give examples. So I give like a variety of everything. And then we're going to do hands-on so I can make sure that you understand. And then I'm always going to be open so that when you do have questions, you won't feel like, oh my God, I can't go back to Toya. I don't want to ask her. Yeah, I'm going to be as silly and open as possible so that I don't want any mistakes on the back end when you could have clearly came and asked me. So again, I just want to be that person. So it's like, okay, she's cool. Even if I messed up, we're going to fix it together because I want to fix it with you. I don't want somebody coming in the office, the CRA or the FDA, coming in saying, well, what's this? And I had no idea. So again, just always having I have clear SOPs. before, and I'm going to my site level, before I have any of my employees do anything, I do it first to make sure I understand so that I can give you clear instructions. And then I say, okay, here's this, follow it and let me know if there's anything that's not clear so that we can redo it or I can revamp it. So it's like I always give all those examples. I'm going to write it, I'm going to explain it, and then I'm going to do it. And then I want you to do it so that we can make sure that you understand.
Nice, nice. Tiffany, please.
Yes. So for me, the way I approach it is that, you know, everybody's at a different level. So I'm like, if you're in kindergarten, right? People are at different reading levels, but they're all in kindergarten. So you weren't that smart that you made it to first grade, right? You didn't skip. So everybody's here to learn the same thing. And some might have more experiences than others. Some may have heard medical terminology more than others. And so what I try to do is I try to balance that out. I try to ask, I try to ask a lot of questions. I try to make it very interactive and say, well, in your last position, like, how did you do this, right? Just so that I can kind of gauge on where they are and their comprehension and understanding. And that also helps me when I'm trying to break you out into groups, right? Maybe someone does have more experience. I'm not going to put everybody that has 10 plus years experience in the same group. I'm going to put them with somebody who may be a little more junior. And that's how I try to kind of do that. But I'm still going to like break it down to like, even today, I'm pretty sure you all know what SOPs are and, all those things, but I still have to say what it is because some people might not know or know that an IRB is an institutional review board, right? And so those are things that I try to just kind of say. And I do tell people if I'm talking too elementary, please let me know, right? And I'll try to we can elevate the conversation, but I don't want to leave anybody behind when I'm talking. And so I kind of just, and everybody's different. But again, I think once you use that experience, so when I'm talking about an experience I had in my job, nobody's had that but me. So everybody's kind of all ears, right? You know what I mean? To get that. And then I kind of say, how would you do this differently? Or did you do this in your job? And things like that. And so that's how I kind of just deal with different comprehension levels when it comes to clinical research. But again, if you were not too smart or too intelligent, but if you were at a higher comprehension, you wouldn't be in this class with everybody else. And so we're all here to learn whatever the course material is and, get something from that. And again, ask questions. Sometimes they'll hit me up on a chat about something different or during a break, they'll want to ask me something that's a little more involved with clinical research. And I'm always open to do that. So I try to just meet them where they are, and we all come to a common.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. Kind of making it an equal playing field. So no one feels
I try.
lesser than, or, and Latoya, you with your open door policy, I like to call it, feel free to come and talk to me and ask me anything. Thank you, ladies, for answering my questions. I really appreciate that.
Welcome.
Danielle, I will turn it back over to you.
My voice kind of went away. Thank you, Courtney. Like, where is my voice? So I do have a question because I don't think we really dug into this question. I just thought about it. What advice do you have for someone that is I guess it's a two-part question, for someone who is interested in being a clinical research instructor? And what kind of background do you need in order to be a clinical research instructor? Do they want you to have an advanced degree? What do you need in order to be one?
So it depends on the kind of instructor, because if you're teaching at a university, of course, they want you to have some kind of advanced degree. But if you're teaching for a program like Clinical Research Fast Track, they want your experience. So whereas the university might not even care about your experience because they're going to give you what you're teaching from. So it just depends on what kind of instruction you're wanting to, give out. What are you trying to teach? Like if you're, trying to be a professor, a teacher, and you want to teach from a book, then, you need to be in somebody's university. Protocol is a little bit different. But if you have all the experience in the world, you might not have a degree and you love talking, then Clinical Research Fast Track or an organization like that may be for you. So, which is why I'm not at a university.
But girl, get out of here. I'm gonna say, get out of here, girl. You could totally be one. So this is everything she just said is 100%. One thing I will say to you: network, right? And don't be afraid to reach out. So this is a true story. How I got this adjunct faculty job at Rutgers. So normally, if you're an adjunct, it is not a tenured position. It's part-time. They kind of call you when they want to, which they do, which is usually never. But this particular job was a tenured adjunct professor position that I had never heard of before, and it was Rutgers. And like Latoya said, if you are looking for a adjunct position at a university, you have to have a minimum a master's degree. However, even if you have a minimum master's degree, they prefer a PhD or higher. That's just a fact, even when it comes to medical writing, right? And I do both. And I'll tell you why. When I saw this position at Rutgers, I didn't just apply for it. I went to their program page, I found out who their program director was, and I emailed her. And I said, my name is Tiffany Drummond. Let me tell you about me. And I told her, you would never have seen my application if I submitted it through Indeed, because I don't have a PhD. I have a master's, but let me tell you all the other things I have. This 20 years of experience I have doing clinical research and regulatory, because you have somebody teaching you who doesn't know anything about it. I didn't see that in the email though, right? But that was the truth. And she actually emailed me back 3 days later and said, can you prepare a 30-minute presentation to our faculty? And I did. So once you, all I need, and I tell people, all I need is to get in the room and I'll handle the rest. Absolutely. So if you open the door for me, I don't need anything else. I will handle the rest. Everything else will speak for itself, right? My experience, my credentials, and my mouth. So if you're really interested in teaching, it may not come easy to you, right? And if you apply for it, I tell people now, I get rejection emails every day. If I don't get a rejection, honey, it's not a good day and pigs are flying. So I always get that, but I do know that if I really, really, really want something, I will reach out to that person. They may email me back. I get some, I call it cold emailing, where I'll email someone about a job and they know, like, girl, we are not going to hire you. And I'm okay with that. They know my name, right? They know my name because they have to literally drag it to the delete box, which I'm okay with that too. And so you never know. So if you're really interested, see what program, especially, and because of the pandemic, it's a blessing and a curse that it has allowed online to take forefront in terms of teaching, in terms of jobs, right? Like CRAs and CRCs and regulatory and all that. Remote work is here. And so a lot of these programs are online, right? Clinical Research Fast Track, that's only one of them, right? That's the one that we got hooked into, but there are other ones out there that also teach that too. Or I know Latoya won't say it, but she has a whole master class. So you can start your own master class where you like, you know, I've been doing this for this long and I want to teach this. People can just come into a room and let me tell you about my experience, and you start from there. Then people get to know the name, and then you kind of move on, and then people pay you to listen, right? And so you can, it's so many avenues to get to what you want, but you kind of like, you know, it's not a straight line to get there, but you can get there.
Well, thank you. So let's open this up for questions. And before I open this up for questions, let's keep the questions clinical research instructor related. If you have a personal, how can I get into clinical research? That's for another time, and for to reach out on LinkedIn. So you want to make sure that the questions are focused on being a clinical research instructor. Okay, let me look in the comments. And you feel free to come off of mute or to put a question in the chat.
I know it's some teachers in the room. Don't be shy now. Don't do it, because y'all been heavy in this chat. Okay, I couldn't even keep looking over here in this chat.
I was laughing at the comment. I think it's from Portia, where she said her students be sizing her up like they ready to fight.
They do that too, right? And so I tell people, Latoya, you can really talk to this. It can be very intimidating if you are going into a room where they may have more experience than you, right? Like maybe someone who's been a doctor for like however many years, right? And some of them come in with the like, I already know this already. Like, I'm just here because, you know, I'm doing this training for whatever. And like, one girl actually fell asleep. I'm not going to front. I was like, you all right? Sure, like I thought she fainted, but she was definitely asleep on the Zoom and forgot to turn it off. All right. So, you know, it can be interesting. It's fun. It's fun. But
hi, everyone. I'm sorry. Hey, it's Portia, y'all. I'm sorry, my camera isn't on, but I look like it's Monday, even though it's Thursday. Okay. So yes, I just wanted to chime in. I don't have a question, but I'm going to try to, I guess, have a question towards the end. But yes, I will say that because our melanin, you know, allows us to look a little bit younger than what we are. I am sized up most of the time in my classes. I do teach with Clinical Research Fast Track. It's been almost 2 years now, and I love it. But it does happen often when I have medical providers as students, if that makes sense. But I'm noticing now, because there are a lot of students coming from different industries that's wanting to join clinical research. They do have their questions and they do reach out after class, which is wonderful because I'm always, you know, available. At least I try to be available to assist. But my question for you would be, in terms of helping your students, I know certain schools do provide the, what is it, like resume services. Even with Black women in clinical research, there's resume services. How would you discuss this with them in terms of maybe a quick overview and then recommend Black women in clinical research, or recommend, hey, use student services for that, so that, you know, one, the students aren't feeling like you're just pushing them away, and then two, you know, you are being attentive, but at the same time, you have to respect your own time as an instructor.
So mine's a little bit tricky because I'm not at a university, so I don't have to respond to them after clinical research fast track is over. I don't, but I'll keep it light. You know, I give them some light guidance. In the beginning, I was helping like a lot. I've actually helped one young lady get a job, and I still communicate and work with her to this day. But I learned that it was taking a lot out of me because it's so many students. Like sometimes it could be, you know, 25, 30 students. And then after class, at least half of them want to talk and like, can you mentor me? Can you do that? So what I started doing was I have a link on my website. You can go book an appointment, but you got to pay if you want to sit up and have a conversation with me, because it started to get to be so much and so many people. But if you're really serious about pursuing this career and you want to talk to somebody that has some knowledge, you know, you pay those couple, it's not a lot of money at all, but you know, my time is extremely precious. And if I spoke to every student that I taught, I wouldn't have time for myself. So that's the way to eliminate the people who are not serious. And you can definitely tell the ones who are serious.
Yeah, for me, you know, I usually, you know, especially if I see people of color in the room and they do reach out to me, I have no problem, you know, promoting Black women in clinical research.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And I know they have resume services, right? So for clinical research fast track, per my experience, they have resume and career services. I also have my own business where I help write resumes and things too. And part of your tuition, I think, is to use those services. So use those. And if you want extra, then you totally come over here to me. If you feel like you don't have the support that you need. And usually, again, like Latoya said, I can kind of feel people, because they'll usually tell me, Tiffany, I haven't seen anyone like you. That's what they usually tell me, right? It'll be another Black woman, usually, right? Or a Black man that would just say, I've not seen another person of color, you know, that has your experience and all those things. And so those people, I kind of guide them in directions where they need to go, whether that's me or someone like Black women in clinical research, or even Latoya, now that I know she exists in the world. But again, I always tell my students too, because I've been burned before, where I recommend a job to somebody I do not know. I do know them, but they're like maybe my friend, but I never worked with them. So I'm not going to put myself out there to say, you know, this was a very good student for 3 or 4 hours, and I'm going to put that on the line for you to get a whole job. What I can do, you know, is say, I know they're hiring, or I know they're hiring, or I know the hiring manager for here, and I can link you with that, and maybe you can start, you know, again, I open the door, but you got to move through it, right? And so I kind of just guide them, but we try not to hold their hand because it's just not possible or feasible to do. So, yeah. So I'm gonna get like Latoya. Yeah, pay me.
Absolutely.
I struggle with it too, because you know everybody wants help, and like you said, I can't help everybody. So
Yes,
the only way to
yeah.
weed out who's serious, who's not serious, because you can't just say, "Hey, Danielle, I want to pick your brain." No, because I don't have that time, and I, you know, even though I want to help everybody, it just really helps me to stay organized, especially when people say, "Oh, hey, can I call you?" Or I'm like, "Hey, let's here goes my link to set up an appointment so that we can talk." But yeah, you definitely have to be able to help people in the way that is comfortable for you. And you can't, you know, it can kind of be a lot because you want to help everybody. You want to see everyone succeed, but you have to do it within your own limit. And you can't do everybody's resume. You can't glance over everybody's resume, like you said. And, you know, for me, what I struggle with a lot of time is people want me to write recommendations. I can't do recommendations for everybody. And, you know, like it becomes hard because I get kind of, I'm like, I feel kind of bad. I'm like, you know, and then people who want you to write recommendations that you've never worked with. I only know you as being a BWICR member, and I don't know your work ethics.
Right.
So I think a lot of times too, I think people really need to really cultivate those relationships that they have closely with people. And because it seems like a lot of times people will reach out and ask for things from people that they haven't really developed a close relationship with. So I would encourage people, like if you have someone that you have worked with before or that knows your work ethic, to ask those people. That's the person that you really should be asking for help instead of asking someone else who doesn't have time, and then you're not getting what you need. So because they don't everybody doesn't ever always have time to talk to you and sort through all of everything. But that's
Put
why
in
we
the
try
work.
and what'd you say?
I said put in the work too, right? Like, so if you just say, "Oh, I met Tiffany tonight," and like, "Oh, Tiff, I'm looking for this job," like you have to put in the work, right? You're gonna get a lot of no's before you get a yes, right?
Mhm.
And even though like Danielle and Latoya and Courtney and me, we have like those connections to, we have the connections, but it's also like we're all working too towards something while we're trying to help you work towards something. And so it's like we all have to like do our individual best, right? Before we reach out to and say, like, link me. You know what I mean? It's like, I've been doing this. Did you reach out to this person? Right. And a lot of times these people are on LinkedIn. Literally, they're on LinkedIn. It's nothing wrong with sending a message.
Yep.
Nothing wrong with sending a message. Right.
Yep.
And I've had that happen again when I have time. When I have time, they'll say, Tiffany, is it okay if I talk to you? Just have some interview, questions I just want to know how to answer. If I have time, I'll totally do that. But you can't always bank on that either. And there's so many resources online. Join groups. Danielle said this yesterday. Join local chapters of organizations, and you don't have to even be a member. Sometimes pay non-member fee to get to an event, right? I think that's part of it too, where we're in this environment now where because things are so virtual that we think all it takes is just this one thing to get in.
Right.
It's not that easy, right? I think we all can attest to that. And so it's work, honey, but we're doing it.
Yes.
Research requires work. And
Yeah.
research requires research.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I've been saying from day one. I'm like, you can't get in here in clinical research without knowing these acronyms, without doing the GCP. Some of these things you can't just rely on for someone to give you everything. You're gonna have to
Yes.
put in some work. Help, what they always say, help me, help you.
Help
Like
you.
My
yeah, like
economics
come.
teacher said that. He was like, help me, help you. I said, honey, you cannot help me. I'm dropping this class. I can't even help myself.
So yeah, come to the table with some knowledge, and I think that will take you a long way because people want to help people that they've seen have made a commitment, and that you know something. But when it's hard to help you when you don't know anything. Uh, you're like, okay, where do we start? Where do we begin? So let's see. Do Tiffany, Courtney,
This
Latoya,
was
do y'all have any last words before we want to say something before we go?
Thank you.
I think
That's
so.
all. Thank you so much. I dropped my LinkedIn. Please link with me on LinkedIn.
Yes.
For anybody looking for something, just post. And again, she got her whole career thing, so I'm not even talk about that. But just go to LinkedIn, connect with as many people as you can, and really get active on LinkedIn, right? Whether
Yeah.
it's something or getting another type of job. I would just say that.
Yep. I say be more active on LinkedIn and Facebook and Instagram.
Mhm.
Yes. Yes.
How about you, Courtney?
I'm always gonna say network. Network, network, network. Closed mouths don't get fed. So I can't help you unless you tell me what you need.
Yeah. So I'm going to come with knowledge is power. I'm just playing. So what they say, higher learning.
Learning.
So thank you everyone so much for joining us for Clinical Research Instructors. I'm seeing that Tiffany is putting some information here in the chat. Please feel free to put your LinkedIn URL in here. And if you have not heard, if you've been under a rock, the Black Women in Clinical Research Conference is coming up in November. So make sure you attend. I promise you, we are about to bring it. And I have been working on this every day. So you know that the Black Women in Clinical Research Conference in Atlanta is going to be top tier. We might have to stay in Atlanta 2 years in a row. I might have to, after this conference, I might have to, what they say, run it back because that's how much I like Atlanta. But yeah, definitely make sure you get your early bird ticket. It ends on my birthday, April 7th. So get your ticket. Right now it's $549 if you are a gold member. and $5.99 if you are not a gold member. So please get your tickets. They are going to, I'm speaking it into existence. The tickets are going to sell out. So you don't want to wait to the last minute, because there's no overflow tickets this time. I promise you that there is no room for overflow. So yes, act now, don't wait later. And Tiffany's also put it in the chat as well. So
I'm
thank
trying to be
you.
your assistant right now. I'm promoting over here. I'm writing this down.
My sister's in here too. She gonna start being my assistant as well. Leah Cole, that's my sister. So look out for her name. And so I'm also gonna, since we were talking and shouting people out, I want to shout my sister out just a little bit. She just celebrated her birthday. So everyone tell Aaliyah happy
Happy
birthday.
Happy birthday.
So my sister is
birthday,
yeah. So my sister is 26 years old. I brought her into the clinical research industry. She's been, how long you been in, Aaliyah?
I'm going on like 6 years.
Okay, so I brought my sister in, and because she's been in clinical research, she's been able to pursue her degree. So she will be graduating this May. And she has
Yep.
a video that's going to play during graduation. So clinical research has changed my family's life, and I'm always promoting it and always pulling as many people in as possible. And my sister didn't have a degree when she started in clinical research. So a lot of times people think that it's impossible. It's not impossible. You just got to know how to network and find someone that can advocate for you and
Yeah.
can pull you up and make sure that that you're able to get into these clinical research roles. And I'm very proud of we call each other Sissy. I'm very proud of my Sissy, and she has her own house. She has her own car, and she's done all of this before. I think she's been in her house for about 3 years now. So clinical research can help you, grow in your career and give you the life that, you never knew that you needed. So I just wanted to throw that in there.
Yes, I'm very proud of my sissy. You're doing such an amazing job. Your nephew is over here trying to take the phone because he sees you. So I'm gonna have to mute you.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone, and have a good evening. Please feel free to connect with us on LinkedIn. If you have any questions for Tiffany, for Latoya, for Courtney, for myself, please feel free to send us a message. Thank you so much for joining us, everyone. Have a great night.
Thank you, Danielle. Bye, Courtney. Bye, Latoya.
Thank you.